So for step 37, checking the RC equipment. Well, we've got to grab our radio, our charged battery, and connect it to the speed controller and our receiver. And I'm going to be using the Futaba S148 servo. Part of this is because with the direct comparison with the CC01, I more or less want the equipment to be the same. So this is the same servo that I'm using in the CC01 that I built just recently, the Hilux. So we're going to use the same servo for this. So as you can see, we need to attach everything because we have to make sure that the servo is in neutral before we attach all of these goodies. Now what's interesting is, and I've not seen this before, is you can see that there's a number of metal servo springs for the servo saver. And in most kits, they're always plastic. But with this CC02, they're metal. So we're going to end up having to build that and then attach it to the servo. But you can't attach it unless this is in neutral, which is the whole point of connecting everything and making sure that it is. So I'll set this up and let's check that everything's okay. Okay, so I have everything plugged in. We'll turn the transmitter on. That's ready to go. And everything is going into this speed controller. Now this speed controller, I just actually got this in the mail. I had ordered some parts for some other cars and other projects that are coming up, and they had a special with these, and they're TEU 105BK. They're actually a discontinued electronic speed controller. And you can see one of the big differences, it's only got the 2 wires. In other words, this really is only for a brushed system. So most of the newer Tamiya speed controllers had the 3rd wire in case you were using a brushless system. But as I'm sticking with brushed for this, I don't mind having this, so this is the speed controller we're going to use. Plus the fact on the CC01, it has a Tamiya speed controller, so again, I'm trying to keep it pretty much the same, so the Bronco will have this electronic speed controller from Tamiya. Anyways, everything is plugged into the receiver. We're ready to go. So what we're watching for is this motor and the gear. You will see that when I flick this on, it's going to do a little shimmy. And if it shimmies, you'll know that we're in neutral, or it's going to adjust itself, because we can't install anything else until this is in neutral. So let's just see what happens. I'm going to flick this on, and you should see a shimmy. There you go. So if you didn't see it, I'm going to do it one more time. See how it does a little bit of a shimmy there? Well, once it's done, we know that it's in neutral. Now all of the parts that we need to install can be installed properly, and we know that now. So that is that part is done. So I'm just going to turn everything off, unattach everything, and we'll start working on the servo and get all of the servo saver pieces attached. So before we attach all of this, there is one other thing I do want to show you. You'll see here it's saying use an MD4 tapping screw. Well, that might not necessarily be the case depending on the radio and servo that you choose. So for example, down here, they actually show you that when you take the screw that came off of the servo that you're using, you want to match it. Was it a tapping screw or was it a standard screw? If it was a standard screw, it's going to go, was it thin or thick? Well, depending on which one, you'll have an MD2 or the MD5. If it was a tapping screw, was it thin or thick? And depending on that, it'll be an MD4 or MA3. Well, you can see that this said MD4, and in actual fact it is the correct one for what I'm doing, because mine is a Futaba servo. Now I have a thing for Futaba. I have used Futaba ever since I was a kid. So when I first had my first RC, which was a Blackfoot back in the day, it was a Futaba radio, and I've always liked them. It brings back memories for me, so I've kind of stuck with it. And in this case, this S148 servo, I was using these back in the day as well. It just so happened that I had a few, so I've put this same servo in the CC01, so the Bronco's going to get the same one too. So I'm very familiar with how Futaba works with all of this, because the other thing is, Tamiya does this as well, that on the back side of their parts, you'll see, is it this one that's going to show it? Maybe it's not that one. It must be this one. Yes. So for the Q1 piece, on the back side, it actually says this is for Tamiya and Futaba. So the Tamiya and the Futaba gearing, or the gear that's on their servos, is identical. So this one is used for that. But there is, as you see here, there is a Sanwa and a KO or an OK. I'm not actually sure what that one is. So depending on your servo, you may have to change that part out. And you'll have to figure that out yourself by either testing it or trying it if you don't have either one of those brands. But I just wanted to let you know that, because that will make a difference, because even though they say MD4, depending on what you have, you are going to have to go through this chart to determine which one is the one to pick. Okay, let's get on to installing all of this on the servo. So first off, let's grab this piece here. So we know that in my case, we're using the Futaba Tamiya. So if you look at this is a high torque servo saver, basically. But the thing is, it's not that easy to put together. I have been searching to find out what could be the easiest way to put this on. And initially it seemed like it was easier just to put these pieces together and then pop it onto here. But based on the trouble I'm having, and do you see how the servo saver is getting all chewed up? I'm going to try it in a different way, because I need to figure out a way that's going to be easiest for you, because if I'm having trouble with this, I'm sure you're going to be having trouble with it. So you see with that one, that snapped on right away and it's in the correct place. So we've got one of them on. And the reason I'm thinking this might be a better way to do it is because now that's protecting the plastic. So now it's just going to be a matter of figuring out how to get those two pieces on top of that. So now that the first one's on, we've got to get this second one on. And I'm assuming that because it's the metal that's there, it should be able to slide over. And I can feel it. I mean, you can see that it's opening up. Oh, might have it. We do. So there's the second one in place. So now let's do the third. And now it's in place. So that is the way to do it. Interesting. So if you're dealing with this high torque servo saver, the easiest way to put it on is to get the first one on, then squeeze the second, then squeeze the third. I saw a video that was showing it the opposite way, where they were taking each of the rings, squeezing them, sliding one over top, squeezing the other, sliding it over top, and then they were putting a lot of pressure on this plastic piece to actually pop it on. Well, I tried that numerous times and I wasn't getting anywhere. So the easiest method that I think all of you will find to do this, if you've never done one, is to do each ring separately. Because once the first ring is on the plastic, each of the others will slide over and you're not wrecking the plastic on the servo saver, as I had just shown you earlier, where the rings were kind of chewing it up, because I'm trying to get 3 rings on at the same time. So just do this individually and you should be okay. So now we can move on to the next step. So you can see here, we know that this is going to go onto our servo, and the servo is this way. So based on the way that cable is, we know that that is going to sit like that. And you can see here in terms of how this is supposed to be, it's going to be up and down. So basically, if we set this on there, well, let's see which way is going to be best. Is it better to sit it there? Actually, I would say the answer is yes, because if you turn it that way, see how it's too far to the left? I'm just trying to go onto the gearing. If I go one over, that's close, because it's already sort of slightly the other way, but I think that'll work. So if we put that on, now we have that in place. Now we're going to put the ball connector, and you can see it's going to go into the center one. So we know that this is going to sit like this. The ball connector is going to go through the center, and it's a flange nut that's holding this together. Now, one interesting thing about this is, which I've maybe not seen before, this ball connector is pretty big for a steering servo. You don't see that very often, because that's actually quite a large one. Usually it's a smaller ball connector for this. Now, based on the way this is going to go, I can see that it's on there, but I might just grab a pair of pliers. I'm just going to hold the end and use the larger part of the box wrench to turn the last bit. There we go. It just didn't seem to be on tight enough. So there we go. There is our ball connector attached to that. You can see that this needs to go up and down, so it's going to fit like that. And you can actually see that this piece right here, the thing that's sort of jutting out, is going to fit over top of there. And you can see in there, it's going to squeeze in place. So now that those two plastic parts have closed that lip, more or less, you can sort of see there's a tiny line in between. Then we take this piece, which is going to slide over top and just sits like that. And then we're going to grab our screw and we'll stick that in. Now I'm going to hold the servo this way with my thumb on the servo saver itself, so that it doesn't move when I'm screwing this in place. And I can feel it wanting to now, so I'm just going to go a little bit farther. I've got my thumb on there, do a little bit of an extra turn. There we go. So there is our servo. Now you can see it's not perfectly up and down, but that's okay. We can adjust that with the radio once everything is set up. But that's good. So that is step 37. We've done our radio check, the servo's in place. So we can move on to step 38 and we'll attach the servo.